Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Back with you, Nicole Jackson, creator of Black and National Parks Week. This week is the official week, August 25th through the 31st. So we started last Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday. And that was actually the birthday of National Park Service. We are working our way through the week, and it is day 5 of Black and National Parks Week. Hosting, amplifying, sharing about the Southeast region. And our theme, overall theme is Rep Your Region. And the sub theme for today is Culture and Community. So we have special guests today with us, Michayla, who's an intern, who's interning, doing things in regards to working with the National Park Service. So she'll be sharing her journey and story with that experience. I'm super excited to have her here. So without further ado, we're going to get started. And if you would like to introduce yourself, Michayla, where you're from and what park site you are still interning at or have interned.
Yes. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Michayla Cherichel. I'm a recent graduate of Florida A&M University. I'm from Austell, Georgia, and I'm currently interning at Fort Raleigh National Historic Site in North Carolina.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with me today and participating in the week. And I'm excited to learn more about this site. I'm not as familiar with Fort Raleigh. I've heard a little bit about some of the history with freedom seekers, but I would love to learn more about what you've learned and what your work entails as an intern currently, and things that you've learned. So without further ado, let's get started. How did you get into this, or how did you find out about this opportunity to become an intern?
So I'm interning with HBCUI, which is Historically Black Colleges and Universities Internship Program, and that's kind of under the National Park Service. And I just found out about HBCUI just scrolling on social media one day, and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. And they had opportunities for communications majors, and I was an English major during undergrad. And so I kind of had never had experiences with the National Park Service. I've been to Kennesaw Mountain Park in Georgia. I've been to the MLK National Historic Site, also in Georgia. But other than that, national parks kind of seem like this foreign thing. So, I just kind of wanted to dip my toe in and see what that world was about.
So did you get any background knowledge beforehand? Did you research on your own? Did you get help from community about this internship opportunity? Did you have interests of your own? What did that look like before applying?
I think that I didn't really know much about my park before applying, but once I applied and I interviewed and I was accepted for the position, I did kind of get to learn a little bit more about the park. So at Fort Raleigh, we interpret the kind of histories, heritage of multiple groups. Most people come looking to learn about the Lost Colony, but we also talk about Algonquin-speaking natives of Roanoke Island. And we also talk about, which is my project, the Freedmen's colony that existed here during the Civil War. So I hadn't had too much exposure, really. But as far as the internship in general, I think within my program, I've had a lot of support with my program director. She kind of, would, fill me in on the park a little bit and kind of get me prepared for it in that way.
So what were some of your applying when you were applying, what are some things that stood out to you or helped you think more about the role that you would have as an intern?
When I was applying, in the job description for my internship, there was a great emphasis on writing, and in the work that I've done and the work that I seek to continue doing, I emphasize literacy a lot. So that was something that really caught my eye. So I've done a lot of writing. Ooh, sorry. So I've done a lot of writing as an intern, and I tried to like encourage our visitors to, also kind of get their wheels turning about different things, and use their reading and writing skills in their visit to the park and the different things that they're learning. I try to get people to internalize those things and kind of have some food for thought once they've left the park, and do that through writing activities and such. So that was something, that kind of public education piece, getting to engage with the public in general, but then focusing in on education and literacy, that stood out to me. And I was like, oh, this might be, a great opportunity for me.
So when you started your internship, what was your first day like, if you can recall? Were you nervous? Did you have a lot of questions? What was that experience like for you on the first day?
My first day was actually very unique. It was unexpected. On the first day of my internship, I was actually part of an all-park effort to clean up a house that had fallen into the water, into the ocean down in Rodanthe. And that's part of Cape Hatteras. But that kind of exposed me to the landscape here and the changes that are happening here. Like I said, my program director, Ebony, before I came, she had kind of, talked to me a little bit about the site. And she was like, there's a lot of change going on, a lot of environmental change going on down in Hatteras, in Cape Hatteras. But I really got to see it for myself on that first day. And you get to see, or I got to see, the importance of preserving this land. Because my park is kind of part of a group of 3 different parks, which are it's the Outer Banks group. So, that wasn't at my site directly, but we all kind of work together to help the environment and the community in that way. So it was a unique day.
That's really cool. What experiences did you have, I guess, or even responsibilities, outside of the cleanup that you mentioned? What did a typical day or week look like for you and your internship role?
A typical day includes a lot of guest interaction. So as I said, it's a 20-week internship. So I started in May and I'll be done in October. So I'm still kind of doing some of those responsibilities and tasks. But even a day like today, I give programs throughout the day, and my programs are on the Freedmen's Colony. Just kind of walking through the visitor center and walking the park grounds, interacting with people, asking them questions about, what their experiences have been in parks, what their experience has been at Fort Raleigh, what they're looking for, what they know about Fort Raleigh, what they would like to know. It's really guest heavy, I would say, or visitor heavy.
Did you have a chance to engage with people from the community specifically, or more people outside of the location, town itself?
While I'm wearing my kind of intern hat, I don't really get to engage with the surrounding community. But, in my free time, I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to connect with some people who are in the community. Some people actually who are descendants of the Freedmen's Colony. So there is a Black community here in Manteo. I wouldn't say we get very many Black visitors at the park, or many, community members at the park necessarily. It's a very kind of touristy area or touristy destination. But I have been able to kind of connect with people outside of my internship itself.
That's good to know. I think it's good to have that experience to explain the variety of ways that you engage with visitors. And I guess to help you think about what's kind of still missing or what needs improvement with that engagement. So thank you for sharing that. Let's dive into the history of the site and what you've learned so far and why it's such an important part of history.
I think that I think Roanoke Island is an important part of our American history because it shows how we've all like coexisted at different points, and how we've all different groups of people, whether that's different racial groups, ethnic groups, whatever, creates those differences, different groups of people occupy the same land, at various times. So there's a lot of history in each area. I would say that currently the primary story here, or the primary story told here, is that of the lost colony. It's called Fort Raleigh after the military fort that was built here. But I think a more fitting name might even be, Roanoke Island National Historic Site, because of the different groups of people who have lived on this land, and whose stories and histories are here. So, as I said before, I'm studying the Roanoke Island Freedmen's Colony, and I can give you a little bit of that history if that's what you're looking for.
Yes, definitely. That would be great.
So the Freedmen's Colony existed from 1862 to 1867. So there's some overlap there kind of with the Civil War. And it originated as a contraband camp. It was just supposed to be a wartime settlement. But it kind of ended up evolving into this colony of self-sustaining Black people. And I think that this was kind of revolutionary for the time. But it was still a colony, so it wasn't necessarily run by these Black people, which the more that I've studied this story, the more I just realized over and over again, I already kind of held the belief that, colonization is problematic inherently, but you kind of get to see the effects of that here when you study the Freedmen's Colony.
Right.
And while I think it's a beautiful thing that it was this group of Black people who, they were building this life up after having been emancipated, it was still run by people who didn't necessarily have their best interest at heart. But I think that learning about the Freedmen's Colony is relevant to American history because it points to our shared humanity over and over again. Every time I give a program, every time I, sit down and read books about the Freedmen's Colony or the Civil War here on Roanoke Island, I'm just constantly reminded of the value of this history through the lens of the things that we share as human beings. The people who kind of sought refuge or asylum here on Roanoke Island, those formerly enslaved people, we all have had experiences with loss. We've all had experiences with starting over. And I think that is at the heart of this story. Loss, starting over, and creating something new for yourself.
Anything in particular you were fascinated by with how they lived or how they utilized that area to survive, essentially?
I think that the thing that kind of stands out to me the most about life here in the colony is the educational efforts. The schools that were built and run here, a lot of missionaries came to the island, but not even those missionary schools, the schools that were built and operated by formerly enslaved people. There's a woman, Martha Culling, who in 1862, she had opened, her own school. It was an all-Black school. And it was the first all-Black school on the island. So I think that education was kind of a cornerstone in the Freedmen's Colony. And it impacted, people's lives here. For many people, this was not a permanent destination. This was kind of a stop on a larger journey to reunite with family or to build a life elsewhere. But at the heart of that was this movement of education and trying to kind of push themselves forward and achieve different things like social mobility and give themselves access to new opportunities that that were not accessible before.
So how did this information help you better understand your role as an intern and how it could be more impactful?
This information on the story of the Freedmen's colony.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned earlier, there weren't too many Black people visiting or people within the community attending that or visiting that site.
I think that when I first started my internship, that was kind of a point of frustration for me. Mm-hmm. But now I kind of have tried to shift my perspective and just sit in the idea that I get to honor the Freedmen's colony. I get to honor Black history by doing this work. And that kind of lack of diversity in the visitors or lack of engagement with the surrounding community, as far as I can see, I just kind of use that as fuel to push me forward to continue doing this work. Mm-hmm. With every program, I try to refine the program. I try to make it more accessible to people, more inviting. Each of my programs is an audience-centered experience. We do ACE training here. Mm-hmm. So, I try to kind of involve my audiences in those programs, and I want to, find different methods of outreach and making this information and the way I'm presenting it more accessible, more palatable, more interesting to the surrounding community. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of take that as inspiration or motivation or fuel to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit more about what ACE is and how you've used it?
Yes. So ACE is that audience-centered experience. That's just the acronym for it. And mm-hmm. ACE, the principles of ACE are just kind of supposed to be integrated into each of our programs. So in my programs, I center them around education within the colony. And it's kind of through the lens of this idea of a new social order. And this new social order was this principle or ideology that kind of undertowed or underlaid everything that was done within the colony. So there was this administrator in place, and he believed in this idea of the new social order. And he kind of carried it into everything that he pushed for in the Freedmen's colony. And when he brought these missionary teachers in, because students of all ages, these freed people, refugees, asylum seekers, whatever you want to call them, of all ages, these inhabitants of the colony were attending these schools, the missionary teachers likely became, very influential in their lives because they were involved in the schools, they were involved in churches, hospitals. It was just kind of an all-encompassing effort to support these people. And the missionary teachers also subscribed to this idea of that new social order. And I like to ask my audience, this is where the ACE comes in, I like to ask my audiences to kind of take a moment to reflect on the impacts that their biggest influences have had on them throughout their development as people. So whether that's, thinking about the lessons that parents have passed down, or teachers or coaches, or just the people who have helped to shape us and how we view the world, how we think that we're supposed to show up in the world. So I just kind of use that as an opportunity to engage my audiences in that way, because I think that it's important to connect ourselves to history, because when we're learning about history, we're learning about people. Like, we're not just learning about the North and the South and the enslaved and the free. Yep. We're learning about human beings. So that's kind of where the ACE, the audience-centered experience, comes in for me. That's how I incorporate it into my programs. Just getting people to reflect on their own lives and connect the story to something bigger than just the story, if that makes sense.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And again, I feel like that's so important in thinking about the relationships of people. as a whole. And yeah, communication is a big part of that, which ties back into education. So for you, what have been some skills that you've developed while doing this internship so far?
The number one skill that comes to mind is my public speaking abilities. I think for a long time I'm a very reserved person, I would say. But I have, kind of come out of my shell in that way. And it's gotten a lot easier to speak to people and to convey different ideas with people. Another pretty big skill that comes to mind is the ability to adapt information based on my audience. So in each of the programs that I give, in a single day, I might give 2 programs, one at 12 p.m., one at 2 p.m., both on the Freedmen's Colony. And my audiences will range from, I had 2 people in my program today. I've had, 10, 15 people in programs. So you kind of have to adapt based on who is in your audience. I've had, audiences of mostly older people. I've had mixed age ranges. Families often come to Fort Raleigh. I've had younger kids in my audiences. So you kind of have to figure out how to make the information that you're trying to communicate accessible, understandable, comprehensible to whoever is in your audience. Right. Another way that I've done this is through the biographies that I've written. So far, I've written 2 biographies on people who passed through the Freedmen's Colony, which is also very interesting to me. Yeah. These are Black people who once inhabited, this land as colonists. And those articles are meant to, the kind of NPS standard is that these articles are meant to be written on an 8th grade level. So that means any adult, any student, anyone of any age, if they have kind of reached that 8th grade reading level, they should be able to read this and comprehend it. Right. And that's a new skill for me because, coming out of college, I'm used to that kind of academic writing, and that's definitely different from writing specifically for a general audience. So I think I've loved developing that skill. I think it's very valuable, and I'm interested in making public education more accessible. So I'm grateful that I have now acquired that skill because that'll help me in the work that I am seeking to do.
With that, have you experienced any challenges? I know, writing a biography isn't easy, especially when you have to meet, specific guidelines for your audience. What have been some challenges that you've encountered, whether it's working with the public or just behind the scenes that you've encountered?
I think thankfully I have not had any difficult encounters with the public, on a one-on-one level. But I think that probably my biggest challenge so far has been the lack of engagement when it comes to the Freedmen's Colony. Fort Raleigh within the last few years has definitely, made an effort to more inclusively interpret our history, more inclusively interpret the history of Roanoke Island. And, I'm very grateful for that. There are Freedmen's Colony exhibits within the Visitor Center. And, I give programs on the Freedmen's Colony. Each of the other rangers gives programs on the Freedmen's Colony. So there's definitely an effort to kind of get more people engaged. We have our Freedom Trail. On the trail, there are these very cool. It's very cool. But on the trail, we have these life-size kind of silhouettes of people. And that was a 2-year project. Some of the people who lived in the colony are depicted on that trail. But I just think, the park is making an effort. It's just kind of taking a little bit for the public to catch up, for the public to kind of become aware or in tune with the efforts that are happening. So that's been my biggest frustration. But again, I would say that that's more encouragement for me, where I can see the work being done and I'm like, okay, we just have to keep doing it and, creating pop-ups. That's something that I've been interested in recently, is these kind of temporary exhibits that allow people to engage in different ways. So today I put out my first, final finished product of a pop-up, and it's related to the Freedmen's Colony in my mind, but the questions are more general. Each of us has the responsibility to preserve and share our shared history and heritage, but how do we do that? So the pop-up just asks, what is heritage and why is it important to preserve it? What is the value of learning about history and stories that don't seem directly connected to me? So just kind of getting people's wheels turning, and getting them thinking about, not just the Lost Colony, but also the Freedmen's Colony. So yeah, those frustrations have just kind of encouraged me to continue to pour into my work and put my all into this.
What's been a memorable or a rewarding moment for you throughout this experience?
The hugs after my program. I've had a lot of great, meaningful reactions to my programs. Very encouraging. People will come up and talk to me afterwards. During my programs, I say, I have some visuals that I show my audiences, and I'm like, if you want to come up and kind of see anything, get a closer look at anything, then you're free to do that, and I'll answer any questions. And I feel like it's after pretty much every program, I get people coming up, and whether they have a question about the program or just what I'm doing, or just, a word of encouragement or some of their feedback, that is honestly, that is what keeps me going. So those have been my most meaningful experiences. I've gotten a few hugs from some moms in my crowds, and those that's what keeps me going. So
I love that. It's always nice to have that instant feedback too, and it's you're not waiting days, weeks to hear back, but they're instantly really excited to have had that experience with you.
Yes.
What's kind of the thinking about your opportunities moving forward? Is there anything in particular you have to complete or get done before you wrap up your internship, which is not too far away?
It's not too far away. And I look at my calendar, I look at my planner every day, and I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually right around the corner. 20 weeks is just flying by.
Yeah.
But right now I'm working on, as I said, some pop-ups, just some kind of short-term exhibits to get people engaged and get them thinking about different things in the park. But kind of the big project that I'm working on right now is an article kind of talking about the new social order and those things that I discussed in my program, looking at the difference between intention and impact, because I think there were a lot of good intentions by that administrator with that new social order idea. He had good intentions in some ways, and the missionary teachers had some good intentions, but they also had some problematic ideologies, which caused some misalignment between those good intentions and the impacts. So I'm just kind of working through my ideas for that article right now. I would also love to do an article on the Freedmen's Colony, but specifically on descendants of the Freedmen's Colony and how they honor their history, their heritage, and how they kind of keep that story alive within their families. So those are some of the things that I have kind of on my plate for the next few weeks.
You mentioned that you met a descendant or two. So what was that experience like? And have you just had more informal conversations, or were those formal interviews that you've done?
I haven't had any formal interviews. I haven't done any formal interviews. But for that article that I mentioned, then, I would do formal interviews for that. But I have met Dr. Michelle Lewis and then Miss Joan Collins, who is involved in the Pea Island Life Saving Station Museum. It's the Pea Island Cookhouse Museum, and it kind of commemorates and honors the members of the Pea Island Life Saving Crew, which was the first all-Black life-saving crew, and that was here in North Carolina. And they conducted a heroic rescue of a ship that was, lost at sea, caught in a storm. Wow. And they weren't honored for it until 100 years later. So there's, a deep history there. There's a very big story there with the Pea Island Life Saving Crew. And, Ms. Collins and Dr. Lewis they've really been helpful. They've been helpful not just with my work for my internship and some of the projects that I've kind of, been trying to do, and some of the information and local history that I've been interested in, but also just in, giving me a sense of community, giving me kind of people that I feel comfortable, going to, familiar faces, even though they were strangers before, just familiar in the sense that I'm the only Black person at my park, outside of one other person, but he does not work in my division. So it gets a little lonely sometimes. Yeah. But I'm grateful that I've been able to kind of connect with those members of the community. And I do look forward to, speaking with them more, and hopefully getting that article off the ground and any other projects. There's a lot of work to be done here, and they've kind of been able to show me that, and I'm just grateful for that.
And now you have this extended family, knowing that you've made that connection, and that you can continue that outside of your internship, which is, I think, really inspiring. So that's pretty cool that you got to experience that and actually learn more about living relatives.
Yes, it's at its peak, the Freedmen's colony was home to 3,500 Black people, roughly, and it was 3,900 in total. So that was at its peak population. Wow. But of those people, of the people who were inhabiting the colony, only about either 11 or 13 of those families were able to stay after the Civil War. So the fact that there are descendants of the colony here and just continuing to exist and live just normal lives, the fact that is even a reality is amazing to me. Yeah. And I think it's just very special. So I'm honored that I've gotten to speak with people, and that they've kind of, let me in a little bit and shared some history with me, given me some pointers, and just guided me a little bit. I'm very grateful for that. So,
what has this experience done for your thinking about your future as a whole? Have you had any opportunities to think ahead with what you want to do, and why have you picked that, I guess, career path, or what you would like to do moving forward?
So I think as far as the specific career, I don't quite have that nailed down just yet. But after my internship, I'm looking to pursue a master's degree in library sciences or library and information sciences. And I also would like to pursue a graduate certificate in literacy, be a literacy specialist. So this internship for me has kind of affirmed that I am on the right path, that this is the work that I want to do, that facilitating public education, public access to history, that is what I want to do. So how that happens, I don't know exactly what exactly that looks like. I'm not sure, but that's what this internship has that's the gift that it has given me, is that affirmation, like, you are on the right path, and this is kind of the right thing for you.
I love that. Yes, and we definitely need more library focused careers, literacy careers, education careers. We need so much more of that. So that's really cool that you want to go in that direction. What advice would you give to anyone your age or younger that is interested in interning at a national park site?
Do it. I would say literally just do it. Visiting a national park was on my bucket list for the year, so this kind of just fell in place for me, and it matched up to my personal endeavors in that way. But it also has given me just such a golden opportunity of professional experience, professional exposure to the national parks, which felt kind of distant. I didn't know much about the National Park Service at all before I did this. But I feel like now a whole new world has just been opened up to me. And I could work in the Park Service, I could work along the Park Service, because, regardless of whether it's, government or a private agency, I just feel like this work is important. So if you are someone who feels like this work is important, like, dip your toe in, go for an internship. I would say just do it. And, you have support there, especially with, here's my little plug for HBCUI. You have support, especially with programs like HBCUI and other programs that look for specific people to put in these places, because for these places that are supposed to be accessible to all of the American public, it's important that all of the American public is represented. So if you're interested, just go for it, I would say.
Yes, and I very much agree with that, because I feel like any internship, it's just helping you figure out what you want to do versus what you don't want to do.
Yes.
And anything is worth trying if you're really passionate or just want to have more answers. Even if you realize you don't, it's not something you want to do long term, at least you tried it out and it gave you a little bit more perspective of, having to pivot, or like you were saying, in doing the internship, it was affirming other things for you. So, if it's an opportunity to grow and learn and meet new people, and expand your skills, I would say go for it as well. And I feel like those types of experiences really help you understand the value of trying something new and different. And it doesn't necessarily feel like a waste, even if you're like, I realize I didn't want to go down this path, but you have more answers than when you started. So that's what I recommend as well. So I appreciate that advice, and I'm hoping that's helpful for anyone who's thinking about this as an opportunity as well. I want to make sure that there's kind of this tie-in to me, like reaching out and finding out about the work that you do through Ebony, who's also a really good friend of mine. She's amazing. Your interest in Black and National Parks Week as a whole. I know a lot of people, I've been doing this since 2020, but there's still a lot of people who aren't familiar with the work that I'm doing and why it's important, which I'll reiterate that it's amplifying stories, contributions, and experiences of everyday Black people visiting national parks. And that's something I'm really passionate about, just because the storytelling, I think, needs to be amplified more, whether you're a part of NPS or, adjacent, NPS adjacent, or even just a park advocate. I think it's an opportunity for us to really better connect to community through sharing our experiences in places that we've heard about or are familiar with in a more meaningful way. So can you share a little bit to the audience of what interested you in Black and National Parks Week or what you want to learn more about?
So as I said a little while ago, the engagement between the surrounding Black community and my park is lacking in some ways, I would say, from my point of view as an intern, and just what I've seen this summer. And I am always going to be kind of an advocate for getting more people outside, for getting Black people outside, getting Black people connected with each other, connected with nature. I think that human connection to nature up under literacy, that's about like, that's one of my biggest things, literacy and then nature. So I honestly, I want to know all there is to know about Black and National Parks Week. I would love to, be involved and follow it, because I think that the work you're doing is so important. I think that for me, national parks, as I said, kind of seemed like this faraway thing. But when you look around, if you look at a map of how many like parks we have, parks and park units we have in the country, there's hundreds, and they're all around us. So getting people connected to those places, and realizing that it's really not this, out of this world experience. It's not something you have to have a bunch of money to do, or, a bunch of access and extra time lying around. It's just, there's probably one in your city or a nearby city. So I think that's why I appreciate Black and National Parks Week. Not just because, I've had the opportunity to kind of share more about my internship experience that has been so special and so meaningful to me, but just because of the work that you do, highlighting what can be seen as, the mundane. You say like everyday Black people in these parks. And I think highlighting everyday Black people is something that is so close to my heart. That's why I've loved writing the biographies with my internship. I got to write about Miss Marie Farabee Watkins, and she just, she arrived on Roanoke Island. She was just a kid. Her mom had liberated Marie, herself, her sister, and the mother. She took their emancipation. It wasn't given, and they arrived here, and I got to write a biography about her and look into her story. And I feel like there's so much beauty in the mundane. She wasn't like she wasn't Booker T. Like, she went to school with him, but she wasn't Booker T. She was a school teacher, and then she got married, she had a kid, and she lived a quiet life in Brooklyn. So I think there is so much beauty in the mundane, and especially as Black people in the United States, in the world, but in the United States, there's so much beauty and just resilience in just living your normal day-to-day life. So doing that and connecting it to us being in parks, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And those were, actual goals of, these people, enslaved people, is to just live life, not to have to be fighting every second of the day. That was something, that they were very adamant about. And, some people, you can tell that it's part of their purpose, part of their mission. And for others, it's just, to be able to provide for their family, to educate themselves, to connect with family. Like, there's so many different reasons of why connection and family and relationships are important, even during hard times. So that just speaks to that, the lives of these people who've, struggled in so many different ways. There's still that resilience and motivation to just be able to live life in the way that they want it. So I'm going to wrap up our conversation with just mentioning, because you talked about the HBCUI program, and I just want to mention some of the sites that, again, connecting to Black history, civil rights, enslavement, things like that are really important, and they're part of the national park system. So we hear a lot about, the parks where you're mostly recreating with, hiking, kayaking, which is great. Those are all great things. Please do them, try them if you haven't. But there are also cultural cultural and historical sites that are just as important. And a lot of them you're going to find in urban areas. So I have my Martin Luther King shirt on that I got from visiting the MLK National Historical Site a few years ago. There's the Tuskegee Airmen. There's Selma to Montgomery, which I had a conversation about earlier with Eric, and his cycling adventures. Little Rock in Arkansas. There's Carter G. Woodson, who's the father of Black History Month. There's the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park, which focuses on music and food and language. These are all places people need to check out. There's Harriet Tubman, she's been getting all her flowers and more these past few years. And I'm just so grateful to have learned all of these things outside of a classroom, but just because I'm passionate about it, it's easy for me to just open up a book or read something online, or hear from people, descendants like I did with Mr. Bransford from Mammoth Cave, who's in his 70s, by the way. This is mind blowing to me, but I'm so grateful and I'm so privileged to have this opportunity in this way and to speak with people like you, Michayla, to just show that learning never ends. It's a lifelong thing, and we will be doing it forever. So there's opportunities at every turn. Please take advantage, whether you're learning about yourself, community, or the world. Yes, please take advantage of that. And I, again, very much appreciate you being a part of this week with me. I've been working so hard behind the scenes and, doing this on my own for a good chunk of time. I'm hoping to have more help moving forward, but it's worth it to me to do all of this because, again, these opportunities need to increase, and there just needs to be more of the storytelling and the story sharing, so we have a better understanding that we're a part of that American history. Our stories and experiences are just as important as the figures we hear about all the time. So with that, if anyone is interested in connecting with you, how can they do that?
You can connect with me through my email. I believe that in my little introduction or biography post, my Instagram was tagged, so I'm there too. So yes, I would love to, anyone who would like to reach out, whether it's a question, comment, whatever it is, I am open.
And then I'm going to post, you did mention the site that you're currently interning at. So if anyone's interested in getting more information, that is the Fort Raleigh historic site in North Carolina. And that is the website that you see on the screen. And then the site, if you want to learn more about the HBCUI programming, feel free to check that out as well. Is there anything in particular you would like to share about HBCUI and how that's helped you move forward with your career thinking?
Oh my gosh. I could go on all day about how just grateful I am for the opportunities and access that HBCUI has given me, the support, the network that I now have access to, whether it's other interns or people like Ebony, who is wonderful, or our sponsors, Soda's Life, saving our daughters and sons' lives. Just the network of people that I have been able to come in contact with, I feel like is really what encourages me to continue. Because, as I said before, it does get a little lonely at my park. I've never really been in spaces where I'm the only Black person, whether that's throughout school, definitely not at college going to an HBCU, but being connected to this internship outside of my work with the park has been encouraging. It's been grounding. And you really we just had our conference with the Department of the Interior just a few weeks ago, and that was the halfway point for my internship. But just getting to meet people who have worked in the Park Service for a long time, who have kind of been in situations that I have, been experiencing with my internship, it's encouraging, it's affirming, and it just makes me want to keep going. So I think being connected to an organization like HBCUI has just been invaluable. I can't, you couldn't put a price on it, really.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, check out HBCUI through NPS. Lots of opportunities. They're always looking for interns. And there's amazing sites. I would assume Cuyahoga Valley is one of those sites since we have the Underground Railroad history. So I encourage you to check that out if you're interested in internships, as well as becoming a seasonal employee or a full-time employee. There's a lot of bridge programs similar to HBCUI that help you make those connections before you, I guess, make a bigger commitment to work for the National Park Service. And that's the same with, DOI in general. So it could be the Forest Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife, things like that. So with that, this has been a great conversation. I've loved learning more about your work and what you're interested in and what you're passionate about, all of the things. So again, I appreciate you being here with me this week, and keep going. Just keep being awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. You keep going as well. I appreciate you having me and speaking with me, and thank you for doing the work that you've been doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you hearing that. Oh my gosh, it's literally like I'm trying, y'all. I'm really sometimes I'm like, wait, should I be still? Yes, it's fine. You're gonna have your, hurdles throughout life, but it's so worth it. Like I mentioned. So I'm again, each time where I'm just like, am I doing too much? I meet someone like you and I'm like, no, this is fine. It's fine. There's more amazingness to come. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you all for tuning in. If you have not had a chance to join any of the talks, they will be saved on YouTube as well as Facebook. If you want to watch the replay, share it with family and friends, colleagues. And yeah, feel free to leave comments, feedback, questions. Any of that is helpful as I continue to build the work that I'm doing. I will be moving forward with getting ready for my next talk, which will be at 6 p.m. Eastern time with Alex Troutman, a good birding friend of mine. He's actually, I believe he's in Georgia, and he is a wildlife biologist. So I'm really excited to hear about his work, more science-based, science-related, with the parks. And he's been an intern and now he's an employee, I believe. So we'll be sharing more about that through an Instagram Live, actually. So tune in for that at 6 p.m. Eastern, and looking forward to having you join and just sharing that experience. And I am so excited that more people are learning about this stuff. So I just need more time to process it all, because these days have been flying by. So actually, when I am done with this week, I'm going to come back and make sure I just try to get as much of this information out as possible so people can stay engaged even beyond the week. And I'll be continuing my story project, which will, I have 2 months left, I think. October and December, I will be collecting stories as well. So, and then I'll start back up again in February of 2025. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Michayla, for being a part of this week with me. And thank you for sharing your internship journey. Hopefully everything wraps up well, since it's around the corner that you'll be done. Yes. And hopefully, we can check in soon and catch up.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you.